None of it means anything if you don't show up and actually push the button. You know, they look around and say, well, you know, maybe someone else will go do it because there's a big enough crowd that'll do it. Wrong mentality. Everyone has to be involved. And by the way, I met someone that shares a similar last name to me today for the first time ever, so very nice to meet you. There's another Trump in the room, so that's always nice. The first Trump I've met, who I had no idea, maybe we're related some way long time ago, but very nice to meet you anyway. So with that, I'd love to open it up to the floor and see if we have any questions. No one thought we could do what we did in South Carolina. When you look at the demographics, right, that was, you know, heavy evangelical, all these things. Well, Trump could never possibly win that, but guess what? Common sense is actually starting to make a difference. And so the party establishment, even the Republican Party, will do whatever they can to try to stop my father because they realize if he gets in there, you know, the little game that they're used to playing and everyone takes care of everyone else and everyone makes money off of everyone else's thing and, you know, everyone's doing incredibly well for doing nothing, you know, that all ends.
Yes.
That all ends. Yes. And he's going to change that game. So again, to my point, get out there and vote. There's only so much they can do. If we win in landslides, the people have to speak and the people have to finally have a voice again. And that's what we're trying to do. But yes, make no mistake, they are deathly afraid of my father on both sides because of what he'll do to that system that they've grown very, very comfortable with.
Like, are you going to go in there and tell them they all have a budget they got to live with, and we're going to start chopping budgets?
Well, you're answering my question. You're answering your own question, and I've seen him do it. It's the reason he's been able to be successful in business. Cut through the red tape. Cut through the nonsense. There's probably not a single agency in D.C. That you couldn't cut 30% of the nonsense off the top. And by the way, not miss a beat, but they've become these bloated bureaucracies, and you couldn't turn deals around as a CEO. People say, well, you know, businessmen, that's not how it is. The country's a not-for-profit. It's like, you know, if you get rid of waste, if you get rid of inefficiency, if you're not afraid to actually say, hey, this is waste and inefficiency because you're worried about offending a few people, you can actually make a difference and make a change. And I mean, when you talk about the $20 trillion in debt that's strangling not just me and you, but think about our kids. I have 5 kids of my own. You know, eventually they'll have kids of their own. You know, you keep compounding it, and it doesn't work. You hit a point of no return. And so some of these notions of, it doesn't matter, the government, write another check, what's another couple $1 trillion amongst friends? It doesn't work. You know, we're basically at that red line now. And if you look, I mean, certainly on the other side, if you look at some of the policies that are in place, I mean, I don't know how you ever recover. You know, we're the strongest country in the world, the greatest superpower, and we're going to give it all away because half these countries feel, well, we're playing to an unfair advantage. As a businessman, you take whatever advantage you have and you run with it and you keep it. You don't give up 200-year head start so that the rest of the world can compete. This isn't participation medal country. A lot of those, you know, circles run in there, and you know, we got friends of ours to come up and talk to us directly about those issues. You know, John lost his leg over at a battle, you know, and came up and gave an incredibly moving speech about that. And in talking to him personally, even over the years before we got into politics, I mean, that system's a disaster. So we want to make sure, you know, while we seem very able and content to be giving illegal immigrants all the free health care they could possibly want, we can't take care of guys who've sacrificed a lot of their lives serving this country. And so it's a system that has to be fixed. Those guys should be able to have the best access to care, not the worst. And he's spoken about it a lot. We're running jobs that, now, again, you got to remember, it's not 2016, this was 1980, 1982. To have a woman in charge of a major project that was a construction job, you know, in New York City, it was unheard of. You know, he's about merit. If that person was better, if that person was tougher and they did a better job, it's not about, okay, well, we're arbitrarily going to put someone in here to fill a position to say, okay, we check that diversity box. It's not about that. It's about getting the right people for the job, and he's been doing that for his entire career. The standard of care in a country that, you know, has some of the best doctors anywhere in the world and makes it impossible for anyone to get anything. So he wants to, you know, get rid of that, put something out there that actually makes a lot of sense, you know, for the people, to encourage other people to then go into medicine, to make sure that, you know, doctors and other practitioners can actually make a living in those after, you know, the amount of schooling that they can and have to go through to do that. So it's a very complicated thing, and they're working on the policy on how they're going to do that right now. But you know, you've heard him speak about it. It's certainly something that's forefront in his mind. I don't know enough about the details of it. Like I said, I'm here. You know, I've been in politics for 3 weeks, so I'm learning as I go myself. I build buildings. If you want to ask about foundations, if you want to ask about construction, I can talk about that. I'm probably the only son of a billionaire that's more comfortable in a D10 Caterpillar than I am on a golf cart. So perhaps I could be helpful in the mines more than I can in terms of the details of medical reform. But I like to say I try either way. If you go 2 feet across the border, across the river on the Delaware, they're fracking, they're doing this, it's generating jobs, it's generating income, and then on 2 feet on the other side, they're saying we're not going to do anything about it. He's been all for that exploration. Now, he's mostly talked about it in a sense of energy independence, and you can see what's going on in terms of oil and gas prices right now being as low as they are, and that's the Saudi cartels and the guy that have been really happy taking our money and robbing us blind, trying to put those small companies out of business because they've been innovating, they've been taking those technologies. I mean, I don't think it changes that much when you talk about mining, whether it be precious metals or when you talk about some of the metals that are being used in computer chips and where China and these other countries have the monopoly on all of those types of metals. We do have to be able to explore, but there's a way also to do it where you can take that exploration and actually make it work where you're also managing those same lands for the benefit of hunters and outdoorsmen such as myself, for the benefit of ranchers who have grazing rights. If you look at some of the great success stories, I think Utah has a couple examples certainly where the EPA gets involved and they try to kill the potash mines, which now actually hold after they've been reclaimed and fixed up. They're actually some of the most productive lands for game, for fish, for hunters, for people who are ranchers and grazing rights. There's a way to have it all and make sure that those lands, again, those issues are important for me because, like I said, I'm probably the first graduate of the Wharton School of Finance to live in Colorado for 18 months as a bartender before I got my job with the organization, because I'm into the hunting, I'm into the fishing. I wanted to make sure that I did enough of that to make sure that when I'm sitting at the office on a Saturday morning at 2 o'clock in the morning negotiating a deal and finishing up a deal, that, okay, I've experienced the other side, I've done everything that I needed to do, that I didn't have any regrets or what ifs. So those issues are very important to me because when I talk about the outdoors and all of this, I know that it was because I was in a duck blind or I was in a tree stand, whatever it may be, that kept me out. Not to say that I was an angel, but it kept me out of a lot of other trouble I would have gotten into growing up. And so I want to make sure that those same outdoor resources are available there for my kids because those opportunities were very important. But again, there is a way to do that with industry, whether it be mining, whether it be oil and gas, to be able to have the best of all worlds. But you can't do it with the bureaucracies that the government's created where rules don't mesh with other rules, and by the time you get through 3 agencies, you get everything that you need to do, and then another one says, well, this doesn't work with our motive, so we shut you down, and you spend millions of dollars just trying to get started, and you can't even put a shovel in the ground. It doesn't make sense, it doesn't work, right? We build up our military, do so in a way that, A, we're taking care of our troops, B, we're giving them the best equipment there is to buy, so they're not going into battle with lesser stuff and being subject to the craziness that's going on right now, and making sure that those countries understand we're not playing games. When you look at what's going on today, I mean, it's sad. We don't even talk aggressively anymore, let alone act aggressively. And we have to do that. And some people have given my father a hard time. Well, he delivers the message it's a little bit harsh. Can you get him to tone it down? It's like, wait, guys, there's a time for diplomacy. I get it. There's a time where we can talk and try to be nice and be really friendly and cater to everyone. And and then there's a time where you actually have to break out the hammer. And we're at the point in this country where we can't talk about things in a whisper and pretend that things aren't issues and God forbid, I think he's done that, and maybe he's brought out the sledgehammer, but it's time. And there's people who say, well, I don't like the way you delivered the messages. So, well, if you don't like the way that you delivered the message, then I assume you think there's no problems here, because if you think it's too much, but in the real world, there's a time, and because he's been so aggressive about these positions, because he has said it that way and said it so harshly, guess what? These issues that weren't talked about by anyone, even the right before, are actually now on the forefront of the debate stage. And he's been doing this for 3 weeks. Imagine if you give him 4 years. I don't think he thinks they're treating him properly when you see sort of the lies that are being perpetuated about him. I mean, I think without question. But again, unlike everyone else, he's sort of able to call him out, and people like you are seeing it and saying, hey, wait a minute, he's right here. That's what's great. Because he's been able to be so vocal about the issue, he's been able to highlight him, and people are finally figuring out how this system, which is totally broken, actually works. That said, he looks at $100 million. I guess it's a lot of money, but Bush spent $150 million trying to get it, and look where it got him. You know, decent guy, decent individual. We spent $15 million, I think, in attack ads alone in South Carolina against my father. But ultimately, if all of you go, show up, push that button, and speak, and say, hey, you know, this is the guy that should be doing this. You know, eventually they're going to fold, or, you know, or there will be no GOP as they know it. And it's probably time for that. You know, I mean, I think we're all for a lot of conservative principles and values and everything that they're talking about, but the way they're trying to do it with their little cadres and their little, you know, backroom deals and trying to cut anyone out who can actually effectuate real change, who actually make something happen for a change, you know, that doesn't work forever. So I think perhaps he's the guy that's delivering that message. And frankly, if there's one thing that we get out of this whole process, is that, you know, he's showing other people that, hey, maybe, you know, if you get involved in the game and do it, you can make a change, and so you won't have the same stable of, you know, politicians just, you know, we get one thing, we sit on a committee for 2 weeks, and now we can check that off the box and say we have experience in XYZ, even though they've never really done anything. You know, it's very different, and, you know, hopefully he's just changing the way this game is played permanently, not just for this election. You know, what he'll do for this country is actually bring in real people, guys that have done this in the real world, guys that are real businessmen who've done it and been successful. You know, it's mind-boggling to me when you have guys that are just career politicians. They probably never even negotiated a carload or lease, let alone this. And we're saying, hey, go negotiate a $1 trillion deal with China. It's mind-boggling. It'd be like me putting my son, who's been wrestling for 3 weeks, you know, putting him in the ring against Dan Gable. You know, there's some things you don't do, and I don't know why, as a country, we continue to perpetuate this and put lightweights in against, you know, people who are saying, hey, let's put the best in a room. He's about, and will always be about, putting the best in a room. So he'll have people looking at all of these issues. He'll actually form teams that can be successful, not just because, well, it's this guy's turn. It's not this guy's turn. We're going to put the right guy in the job. What's right by the hardworking people of this country. And he wants to give you a voice for a change, because unfortunately, you know, that should be the most important voice, and it's been totally lost these days. So thank you, and again, remember, please get out there and actually vote, caucus, do it. It's important. Thank you so much.